Welcome to the library and rare books reading room of the Jewish Theological Seminary. The JTS Library houses the greatest collection of rare Judaica in the Western Hemisphere, providing the Jewish community and the world with direct access to an astonishing array of materials that speak to Jewish history and to our shared Jewish experience. Hi, welcome to the Rare Book Room of the Library of the Jewish Theological Seminary. This is the home of one of the greatest collections of rare Hebrew books and manuscripts in the entire world. And today I'd like to show you a piece from an exhibit we had very recently. My name is David Kraemer. I'm the director of the library and a professor here at JTS. And it is our privilege to put together very special exhibits focusing on Jews in different places, unusual and unexpected discoveries. And in a recent exhibit from the fall of 2022, we focused on the Jews of Corfu. Corfu is an island off the coast of Greece, which was, for much of its modern history, and pre-modern as well, under the domination of the Republic of Venice. So if you were to have traveled to Corfu, you would actually have felt yourself in many significant respects in Venice during these many centuries, from the 14th century all the way through the late 18th. But after Napoleon and after a brief period during which the island was subject to the British, modernity made Corfu part of Greece, and it had an ancient Greek tradition. So Jews living in Corfu, who remained a small but significant community with their own customs, with their own ceremonies, began to imagine themselves as citizens of Greece, producing what citizens of Greece here of the Jewish persuasion would produce. And of course, one of the most important of all productions that Jews have created and devoted themselves to and read over the course of the ages is the Haggadah, the most created, the most printed, the most reprinted Jewish work of all time. Now, we here at JTS have got a significant collection of works from the Jews of Corfu. This is very, very unusual because it was not a large community internationally, obviously. We are also fortunate to be right down the street from Columbia University, whose library also has a significant collection of works from Corfu. And so this exhibit combined works from both collections. It was really a wonderful partnership. What I'd like to show you is what I think is one of the most poignant pieces from this exhibit and one of my favorites. It's a Haggadah that was produced in Corfu near the end of the history of that community in 1940. What's a Haggadah? Haggadah, as many will know, is the script for conducting the Seder on the Passover night. What are the rituals? What do we eat? In what order do we eat them? What are the recitations? All of that forms a beautiful and very, very rich ceremony that's conducted around the table by Jewish families all over the world. The part that I'd like to focus on is a section that comes right after the meal where Jews actually express emotions about some of the bitter times of our history and call upon God to take revenge, to be honest, on the enemies of Israel and the enemies of God. This is not a pretty section of the Haggadah. It's one in which we Jews express some of our frustrations, some of our resentment at the history that we've experienced, unfortunately, often all too bitter. But this community, again, Greek on one side, Hebrew, handwritten and then reproduced on the other, was lithographed because they no longer had Hebrew print. So even that combination shows us how this community is, on the one hand, very resourceful, but it's suffered here. It has shrunk at this point in its history. 1940, what's the Haggadah they produce? What is the wrath they call upon Now imagine, 1940, right? They know what's going on in the rest of Europe. They know that the war has begun. They know that Nazi forces have taken Austria first and then Poland, and the threat to Jews, while there is not yet any awareness of what would come to be known as the final solution, nevertheless, Jews understand the danger that they face. We actually have another Haggadah, one printed in Tel Aviv in 1934, where the Jews are already expressing their fear for the danger that Hitler represents. So now come to 1940, we look at the page that calls out for wrath against the nations, and instead of wrath, when we look not at the text is a traditional text, but when we look at the images, we see something very, very interesting. So if you look closely, first you see a man standing and beating a sword into a plowshare. I'm quite sure that many of you recognize that combination. Beating swords into plowshares is taking war and making it into peace. It is the image of Isaiah, the great prophet Isaiah, who imagined what a more perfect future, a messianic future, although he didn't think in terms of Messiah, what that future would look like. But if you look back at the image and notice the window, right? So the gentleman beating this sword into plowshare is indoors. If you look what's outside the window, you'll see that there is a lion lying down next to a lamb. That's the other famous image of the perfect, peaceful future that Isaiah describes. So what do we see here? We see Jews who know that their community is weakened, who know that they face danger. They can't be naive to what they're confronting. But at the same time, instead of calling for wrath against their enemies, what they're hoping for is peace. A prayer for peace in the images, in the place of words that convey a very different message. This is the way creativity in a Haggadah can change the message altogether. Here in the images, we hear the soul of this community. Unfortunately, their prayer did not come to fruition. They were sent all to their end. Those who remained were sent to their end at Auschwitz. And now we can only remember the Corfu Jewish community. But for hundreds of years, this was a very unique community with its important customs. And this stands in for many Jewish communities around the world that have been far more diverse than we remember, with practices that we no longer preserve. And it's worth returning to them because of the creativity, the resourcefulness that they represent. And I would add, personally, the prayer for peace they express, which I also would pray for and wish to express. Thank you for joining us, and come in person to see the exhibits we have here at the JTS Library.